You see, most of our parents grew up in the industrial age, during the industrial revolution. The mantra of the industrial revolution was go to school, get good grades, get a good job, and stay on the job until you retire. That was the formula for a successful life. Go to school, get good grades, get a good job, and then stay on that job, grow from one level to the other until you retire. Okay? But that ideology might just be why many young persons are struggling today. That ideology of going to school, getting good grades, getting a good job, staying on the job for 35 years might just be one of the reasons many young persons are struggling today. Okay? So many parents don't know that career paths have changed. Many parents don't know that career paths have changed. And many of us, many of our parents grew up when the best thing you can do for your child is to send them to the university so that they can become medical doctors, so that they can become engineers, lawyers, accountants. Those were the things good parents did for their children 30, 40 years ago. But in our generation, those career paths have changed. Okay? Why are they no longer working? You see, we live in an economic planet. For anything to work in this planet, two things are always playing out: the law of demand and supply. That's what always plays out for anything to work in our society. There must be a demand for something, and then the demand is met by a supply. Now, whenever you have a situation where demand for an item or demand for a service is greater than the supply for that service, then that service, that job will be valuable. But once you get into a situation where the demand for a service becomes less than the supply for that service, then that job, that service becomes worthless. So when most of our parents were growing up in the industrial revolution, many companies were springing out. Oil companies, manufacturing companies, different companies were springing out. And these companies need human capital. They need human beings to come and work for them. So our educational system, the universities, were created to supply that demand. The structure of our university curriculum was designed in such a way that people will be able to go through that system in order to fit in into a particular industry. That was what the universities were designed for. So at the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, this was working perfectly because there were more companies than the number of graduates that were coming out of the university. So once a graduate leaves the university, you see different companies coming to ask for their service or for the graduate service. So that's why most of our parents say, once I was out of university, I got a job immediately. Why wouldn't they have gotten jobs immediately? They got jobs immediately because the demand for their service was more than the supply from the universities. So it was working perfectly. So you see a young boy who left the rural area, came to the city, learned a skill or went to the university, and suddenly once he leaves the university, he gets a job. What will every other person in their community do? You saw that John went to the city and now he's a millionaire. You saw that Emeka went to the city and now he's doing well. You too have to go to the city. You too have to go to the university in order for you to do well like Emeka. And people began to flood the universities, the educational system. People began to flood. Those 30 years ago, if you look for a graduate in a community, you might not see up to 4. If you look for graduates in a community, you might not see up to 4 30 years ago. But if you are looking for master's degree holders in some communities, you might see more than you can ever expect. So as time went on, people saw that the way to prosperity was going to school, getting good grades, and everybody were forcing their children to go to school. And then something happened. The supply from the universities started becoming more than the demand from the industries. And when supply becomes more than demand, then the value of those services begin to drop. That's why most of our parents were paid more than we are now. I grew up in a household where my dad was an engineer, right? And he was able, with his salary, he was able to take care of a family of seven children, and lots of extended relatives. And at that same time, he was building houses, he was buying cars. But today, with the same position, that if you go to a company now, at the same position, you will discover that the person who is sitting on the same position he was 20 years ago cannot afford to take care of his nuclear family of three children, one wife. You see that person who calls himself an engineer today is struggling to take care of a family of three children and one wife, because although they are answering the same, they are having the same position, but their value is now reduced. So there is more supply from the universities than the demand from the industries. So why would students not leave the universities and be looking for jobs? When I graduated, we were almost 80 students in my class, in my department, who graduated from the Department of Civil Engineering. And in my city, there are three universities that produce civil engineers. So let's say if all three universities produce the same number of students, that means in 1 year, the universities in my city graduated over 200 civil engineers. So tell me, how many construction companies do we have? How easy is it to start up a construction company? So we can see that the path that our parents had success in is not the same path that we can have success in, right? So the career paths have changed. But today, you go to you go to schools, you see that people are still struggling to study those old courses that are in excess demand, in excess supply. There are so many engineers, just after 10 years, after 5 years, they still don't have a job, because we don't have enough industries to, to, to cater for them. It's not possible. It's not the fault of the government. It is not the responsibility of government to provide employment. It is not the responsibility of government. Yes, the government provides enabling environment, but it is not the primary job of the government to provide employment. So, but many parents don't understand that times have changed. The demands have changed. Now, if you look at the top 10 jobs, the top 10 earning jobs today, most of them were not in existence 10 years ago or 20 years ago. The top 10 earning jobs in the world today were not in existence 20 years ago. 20 years ago, you will not see anybody called that data analyst. But they are among the top earning jobs today. IT managers, software engineers, software developers, blockchain developers. These are top paying jobs that were not in existence a few years ago. So when parents are still stuck in that old career path, that my son is going to the university to become a lawyer. Today, many lawyers in Nigeria are house agents. They are just house agents, because the supply of lawyers is more than the demand for lawyers. I was surprised when someone who I knew growing up, he told me that he's a lawyer, and he was working for a particular firm, and they were paying him. This was like about 4 years ago. They were paying him 20,000 naira a month. 4 years ago, 20,000 naira 4 years ago was less than $50 a month. And this is someone who went to the university to study law. The reason they can pay him such an amount is because the law firm knows that if he does not accept that amount, there are hundreds of lawyers out there who are willing to take up his position. But if the law firm knows that in that particular city, they don't have too many lawyers that can take his position, whatever demand he gives, they will be willing to pay. So once the supply for a service, the supply for a skill is more than the demand, then it becomes almost worthless.